Very good. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Committee on Government Oversight. This meeting is being broadcast live and recorded on the Government Oversight Committee's YouTube channel. The audio stream is also broadcast on the legislature's website. A few reminders before we get started. Please remember to mute yourself when you are not speaking. Written materials for this meeting have been mailed or distributed electronically to committee members. They've also been posted on the OPEGA website at the beginning of this meeting, and you can find them under the GOC Meetings section. During today's meeting, the OPEGA director and other staff may share some of those documents on the screen for us to look at together. During the meeting, the chair will recognize committee members, staff, or others to participate. Members may get the attention of the chair by either using the raise hand function on Zoom, raising your physical hand to grab our attention, or making a request through the chat function in Zoom. But please do remember that the chat function in Zoom should only be reserved for technical matters, getting the attention of the chair or staff, if you're having IT issues and that sort of thing. The public is not able to see the chat function, so there should not be any substantive discussion going on in the chat. Finally, a reminder that for any vote taken today, all members must be, we should be able to see you and verify your vote both with your video on and your audio on. With that, we will get into introduction of committee members, and I will begin with House Co-Chair, Representative McDonald.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Representative Genevieve McDonald. I am from House District 134, which is the offshore islands of Penobscot Bay and Western Frenchman's Bay.
Representative Dillingham.
Good morning, I'm Representative Dillingham. I represent House District 72, which is the towns of Oxford, Otisfield, and Mechanic Falls in Western Maine.
Representative Arata.
Good morning, my name is Amy Arata, and I represent House District 65, which includes New Gloucester and part of Poland.
Representative Millett. Representative Millett was with us. Representative O'Neill.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Maggie O'Neill, and I'm here representing House District 15, which is in Saco.
Senator Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Donna Bailey, proudly serving the residents of Saco, Old Orchard Beach, Hollis, Leamington, and part of Buxton in the Senate.
Senator Bennett.
Good morning. I'm Rick Bennett. I have the honor of serving 13 towns in the beautiful foothills and lakes region of Western Maine across Oxford and Cumberland counties.
Senator Timberlake.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you. I'm Senator Jeff Timberlake. I represent District 22, the towns of Turner Green, Leeds, Lisbon, Durham, Litchfield, Sabattis, Wales, and Wayne, and enjoy this nice spring day.
Thank you, Senator Timberlake. I know we all are as well. Looks like we're joined by Senator DeChambeau. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning. Something's wrong with my camera. I probably broke it, I don't know, but it's not showing in any committee room that I'm in. You want me to introduce myself, I presume?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Senator Susan DeChambeau from District 32, which is Biddeford, Dayton, Lyman, Arundel, Alfred, and Kennebunk-Port. Thank you.
Thank you. And I am Nate Libby. I proudly serve all of the people of Lewiston in the Maine Senate, and I serve as Senate co-chair of this committee. So going to our agenda this morning, first item is summary and review of the minutes from the March 26th meeting. Is there any comment or question from committee members on those minutes? Seeing none, we will move forward. Agenda item number 2 and tab 2 in your binder under new business is a continued discussion of OPEGA's tax expenditure review process. The staff have sent materials to this committee as background. Representative Millet, I think, offered some appropriate comments at the last meeting, expressing his interest in trying to make some adjustments to how we conduct our tax expenditure review process. So I would like to open up the floor for discussion, and I might start with Representative. I was going to start with Representative Millet. Looks like he may have some technical issues. And it looks like we've got Senator Keim who joined us and Representative Millet. Senator Keim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Apologies for my late arrival. I'm Lisa Keim, and I'm proud to represent Senate District 18, which is Northern Oxford County and 2 communities in Androscoggin.
Thank you. And Representative Millet, good morning.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I was without internet service for a bit, but I was on earlier. And I'm Sowen Millet. I represent House District 71, towns of Norway, Sweden, Waterford, and West Paris.
Thank you. And so for Senator Keim and Representative Millet, we were at the new business section of our agenda, discussion around the tax expenditure review process and consideration of some adjustments. Representative Millet, you helped tee up this issue at our last meeting, and I think now might be the time for you to sort of offer some of your thoughts, and we can have a discussion here at the committee level about some items to consider on this process.
Thank you, Senator. And I apologize for the last minute raising of this topic back on March 26th. I have had some concerns over the years about the assignment of workload and the return on the investment of time and energy, both for the expedited reviews that are in the province of the policy committee, namely taxation, and the full reviews that OPEGA does, and wanted to see if we could kind of concentrate on the bigger assignments of reviews to those that might have some larger impact on a particular concern of mine is economic development when we're dealing with those that offer a tax incentive or a form of behavior that might entice more jobs and economic activity. And I wanted to see if there was a way to focus that better and give it more of a priority, and also tie it into the 10-year economic development strategy. It was not my intent to eliminate or even in a major way scale back the expedited reviews of the tax committee, but I do think that there is a kind of at times an overload of work assumed by that committee, and it may or may not be always their priority to finish their assigned work as they're reviewing bills and reporting them out and so on. And you, Senator, have the longest background on that committee. And I remember the minutes were incorrectly stated by me, seeing you there at the 126th legislature when previous Director Ashcroft was there, and we were trying to get the OPEGA statute operational at that level of the voluminous Red Book reports and all of the tax expenditures that we kind of routinely bless every biennium. So I was wanting to see if there was an overload at the policy committee level too, and whether it involved an excessive amount of staff time by Maine Revenue Services, DAFs, and potentially DECD. That's not my area of expertise, so I'm going to defer a lot to you, Senator, and to Lucia, because we've talked a little bit via email this last few hours, and I don't want to in any way presume that I have knowledge or expertise in the area of taxation. It's just not something I've concentrated on, have an interest in, and certainly I like the work that OPEGA has done in the last year on those, what I'd call the full reviews of economic development activity. Seems like we have a lot of them on our plate currently and in the on deck or future schedule. So overall, I guess I'm wanting to think that the huge investment of staff time and legislator time could be sharpened a bit and prioritized so that we're not doing work for the sense of meeting an arbitrary schedule, but we're completing reviews on tax policy issues, whether they be called expenditures or incentives, toward the outcome end of the spectrum rather than the input and output of simply conducting a process review. So that's my overview. I've learned a lot in just the last few days, and I probably opened the ball on this prematurely because I wasn't knowledgeable about the statutes and even the statutory history that Etta just sent us, because in the last 3 sessions, amendments have been made, I think, that are headed in the right direction. And lastly, I was not even aware of the statute that is in place for DECD to do both tax incentive reviews via independent contract, as well as research and development activities. And I understand that assignment of statute has been kind of put on hold given the pandemic year, and probably as a vehicle for connecting more directly to the 10-year economic development strategy. So I'm going to stop there, Senator. You have much more knowledge than I, and I apologize to my fellow committee members if I get out in front of myself on this. I am concerned, and I heard some of my colleagues on the committee from appropriations, and I'm sure taxation, remember the briefings we got during the orientation period back in the winter from DAFs and others, at times expressing concerns about workload and overlap of staff time. And so that was my incentive, to sharpen and focus and try to steer us toward outcomes rather than simply work outputs. That's pretty nebulous, I suspect, to some of you. And I don't think this is ready for prime time, but I do think the talent exists right now on this Zoom to decide whether we want to go forward and to give it a little bit better focus than I've given it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Millett. I just want to note we've been joined by Senator Ben Chipman, who serves as Senate co-chair of the Taxation Committee. He's obviously deeply involved in this work at the policy committee level, and we've invited him to join us to listen in and comment if he's got some items he'd like to share with us. So good morning, Senator Chipman.
Great, thank you.
So Representative Millett, just in response, what I'm hearing you say is you'd like to see more emphasis put on outcomes as opposed to input in the full evaluation process. That's number one. Number two, you've expressed some concern that's been relayed to you by DAFs, Main Revenue Services, and potentially DECD on the workload that's required for them to be responsive to the items that are needed for OPEGA's tax review process. Number three, a focus more on tax expenditures that are economic development incentives as opposed to tax relief for, the various consumables or nonprofit entities, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, I think what I heard was ensuring that OPEGA's staff expertise and resources are used efficiently, and that these full evaluations are fairly labor intensive as we have been doing them. And perhaps there's a question to ask of do we need to be spending the length of time that we have been at the staff level on these expenditure reviews, or could that be tightened up? Is that a fair representation of the points you're looking
It's
at?
not only fair, Senator, it is very sharpened. Those 4 points are exactly what I was wandering around trying to make in my verbal presentation. So you've captured it exactly. And it's a concern of mine. I'm not trying to rewrite history or to, downplay the importance of what we've been doing in the last decade. It's very important work, and I just want to sharpen it as best we can and see if we can.
There might be something in front of your microphone. It's a little challenging to hear you.
I'm sorry, Senator, you captured the 4 points of what I was presenting very well, and I think very distinctly.
So I think we'd all be interested to hear from other members of the GOC, your initial thoughts on some of the suggestions that Representative Millett has made. And then as reference material behind tab 2 in the packet that was mailed to you, you'll see the full list of all of the tax expenditures broken out into the 3 review categories. The first is the full review. The second is the so-called expedited review, or the brief 1-page analysis that's done and sent over to the tax committee. And then the third set are the tax expenditures where we've collectively decided no review is necessary. So those are the three groupings. And I see that Senator Bennett has raised his hand.
Thank you. I really welcome this as a new member of this committee. I really welcome this initiative of like sharpening our focus and sharpening our pencil a little bit. The other aspect of that, as I've just reviewed this as a new member of the committee, is quantum. I mean, some of these tax expenditures are small, and I hate to have the attention going to something that, yeah, maybe there's some issues that we could unveil there, but I think we should put a priority on the largest ones, the ones that are costing the state the most and presumably providing the most benefits. And I really would like to add that to the mix as well.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Khan.
I don't have anything of substance to add, except that I feel a sigh of relief as we discuss this, because I don't think in the legislature we take nearly enough time to step back and sort of look at things big picture. We just kind of keep pedaling as fast as we're going and doing what we do. And we're all so darn busy that sometimes just improving our process isn't a discussion that we take time for. And I think this is really valuable.
I wonder if this time I might ask Lucia if she could put up on our screen one of the spreadsheets that was put together and sent to us. I think it was part of the memo that you sent to us, Lucia, on March 24th. And it includes, it's page 5 of 5, where it shows the completed reviews and what year they were completed.
Okay, I just need to give me a second to tee that up.
Please take your time.
So it was from the March 26th meeting, but it went, okay, I'll find it. Just give me a second.
Am I able to share my screen?
You should be able to, sure. But I will also look for it.
Okay.
Senator, is this something that we also have in our packets that you could point us to where we'd be looking?
Oh, we see it.
Yes. It would have been I think it was emailed to you around March 24th. That's the date of the memo from Lucia. And I'm sorry I didn't give folks more time to locate this one, but can everyone see this screen?
Yeah, so just for context, this was I think these were the handouts actually from, so these are the handouts from the March 12th meeting. So if you have your meeting materials organized in that way, it was from the March 12th meeting where we presented adjustments. We were focusing on the adjustments to and then there was the memo that went out afterwards, which is, here is the, what were approved on March 12th. So,
So I'm calling folks' attention to this sheet because it gives us some sense of the turnaround time for our full evaluations. And I think, you know, we've tried to triage all of these tax expenditures. We've got the large group that receives no review, and we've all agreed it's not a good use of time to engage in that activity for those smaller credits or credits that have been on the books for, 200 years that are never going to go away, right? Then there's that expedited review that's much briefer. And then the full review, which is really where we focus most of the GOC's time, the tax committee's time, and obviously the OPEGA staff. And this chart, I think, is interesting because it shows our experience to date. And, I recall those, vaguely. Probably my memory is not as good as Representative Millett's, but I was on tax in the 126th. I was engaged in those conversations and recall, hoping that we could get these full reviews done in, a 6-month time frame or something like that. And perhaps that was very naive on my part, understanding now all that goes into the review process. But I think if you look at this chart to be able to see what we've been able to do to date, it's about one report every 18 months on average, one report every 24 months. So I'm interested to hear from the committee. Is this new to you? Does this change your view of perhaps the scope and criteria that we've asked our staff to investigate? Is it something we should consider when we're reviewing scope and perhaps narrowing our request? As a quick side note, I find that legislators are very curious human beings, and there's no public policy question that we, aren't interested in getting an answer to. But at the same time, each time we ask staff to investigate a question, it does add time and effort to complete these reviews. So, is it on us to limit our scope? Is it on us to give the staff some parameters for when reports, should be turned around? I'm interested to hear from others on that. And if you're raising your hand physically, I'm scanning the list here to see. Obviously, I've dropped a bombshell here. I don't see any hands. Folks are just in awe. Representative Arata, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering if these reviews are on schedule. Like, did we get behind in the schedule because of other priorities that came up? I'm not sure how these relate to the statute timelines. Maybe Lucia would have an answer. I don't know. Thank you.
Sure. So there is not in statute, there is currently not a schedule set forth for the full evaluations in terms of how many will be completed by year. For the expedited reviews that are performed by the taxation committee with support from OPEGA, there is a 6-year cycle for those, and those are on pace. For the full evaluations, when it was first enacted in law, and in 2015, there was set forth a plan to conduct evaluations on a cycle. And while 6 years wasn't written into the statute, it was that there would be a set done every year. And it was my understanding that it was laid out on a 6-year cycle, and that after several years, there was legislation put in that changed that and sort of shifted it so that it would be a prioritized list of what would happen without specific number to occur per year. And I can quickly share, or just, I'm going to share quickly, but I won't leave it up too long, just to point you to, hold on one second. Let me just bring it up. I wanted to point you to a little overview that I have for you that can show, sometimes screen sharing is not very much fun. Hold on a second. What are you seeing now? Is it the, oh, I can't hear.
Overview of tax expenditure legislation enacted since 2014.
That's what you're seeing. Okay, great. So you have this, you received this by email. So you should have it email yesterday, but I just wanted to point it to you for anyone who wants to sort of read through a very high level overview and what Representative Arata just asked about. So in 2015, which was the big law that enacted the framework and process for the legislative review of tax expenditures, it required the GOC to assign into these 3 categories that you've been discussing. They were called full evaluation, expedited review, and no evaluation. And it required setting a schedule for full evaluation and expedited review. And a 6-year cycle was initially established. And there were annual deadlines for full evaluations and expedited reviews. And after several years of going through this, there was legislation enacted in 2017 that was to amend the schedule and deadlines, and it shifted based on, my understanding was, the experience of what was happening in the initial reviews were proving to, like you said, that schedule wasn't seeming, I think, realistic to the people at the time, and the decision was made that it was the value of doing it the way it was being done was to take that sort of 6-year cycle out of the full evaluations. And so that happened in 2017. And so your question is, are we behind? Well, there is no, for the full evaluations, there is not a sense of being behind, because there is that list of, it shifted. So it's just that sort of rank ordered list that you're going through. So then I think what I hear Senator Libby saying is, is the timeline working for you or not? And so that's a question for you. So I think I'll stop sharing if that gets you what you need, but you can read a little bit further. I would also just note, because it was sort of new to me, and I think maybe to some other members, there is also enacted in 2017 statute that looked at requirements that were in law for DECD to do independent evaluations of R&D and economic development incentives programs. And economic development incentives or investments were specifically defined to include tax expenditures. And so there is also in law a statutory requirement that DECD contract out for independent evaluation of R&D and economic development incentives, which together they call economic development investments. And the first report of that was would have been due in February of this year, as my understanding, due to several issues that DECD is confronted, including the pandemic, that report has not occurred. I just pointed out, as I think it's in reference to Senator Keim, mention of the big picture. I think it's also important or I just would like you to all have the big picture of what is the statute saying in different parts of the statute about doing evaluation of these measures, and just keeping that big picture in mind and making sure that you're just aware of other statutory requirements as well.
Thank you, Lucia. So to, I think Representative Arata's biggest question, the statute was enacted around 2014, 2015, saying we hope to do these full evaluations on a 6-year cycle. After a couple of years, there was conversation at the staff level, the GOC level, and the tax committee that perhaps the 6-year cycle was not realistic, so that was scrapped. And the idea was that staff would continue as they had been producing these evaluations, even if it takes 18 or 24 months. And I think with a few more years passing, my feelings have evolved a bit, and that perhaps we should try to put some boundaries to that and consider reducing the scope of work to try to get the full evaluations done, more quickly, 6 months, 9 months, something like that. I see Representative Millett has dropped off, so unfortunate timing for this conversation, perhaps. So I guess what I would put on the table is if committee members are interested in having further discussion on this matter, we can have staff and Representative Millett and myself and anyone else who would like to volunteer spend a little time trying to put some of these thoughts on paper so that we can bring it back to the committee to continue having this discussion, and perhaps in a more focused, outcome-oriented way. How does that sound? Senator Chipman, is there any comment or question you'd like to offer at this time? Seeing none. Any further comments or questions on this agenda item? Okay. All right, so we will move on. Yes, Senator Bennett.
Just because you're not getting much responsiveness, I'll just weigh in. Again, as a new member of this committee, a lot of this stuff is new to me. I don't know if some of the other new members feel similarly about this, and I'm never embarrassed about my ignorance. I try to correct it when it's important, but that's what's driving some of my quietude here. I really think, just as a general principle, first of all, thank you for taking on this task with Representative Millett, because I think it is useful. I thoroughly subscribe to Senator Keim's comments that I would encourage you to just take a whole look at this and see if we need to change the whole statute so it actually works, because these are precious resources in OPEGA and elsewhere in our own time that we're devoting. And I just want to make it as impactful as possible. And I think just making work for the sake of it is the worst thing. So thank you for taking the time to do this. I don't want you to think that my silence is a lack of appreciation or a lack of enthusiasm for corralling all this mess. So thank you.
Appreciate that, Senator Bennett. And I get the sense that you're speaking for the whole committee here, so I appreciate that. All right, any other comments or questions on this subject? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda under unfinished business. As committee members know, at our last meeting, the committee directed the chairs to draft a letter to the Department of Administrative and Financial Services laying out several requests that the committee had for information. The Department of Administrative and Financial Services did respond to us. I believe it was yesterday. They provided a written response and a significantly large volume of documents, which I think the OPEGA staff attempted to begin to sift through yesterday, but it is quite a batch of documents. So I just want to let folks know that they were responsive, and they have sent representatives here today who I believe are in the waiting room. And let's see. I know that Commissioner Figueroa was planning to make a presentation, and it looks like Commissioner Figueroa is connecting. So with that, we will welcome Commissioner Figueroa to make a presentation. Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, Senator Libby, Representative McDonald, and honorable members of the Committee on Government Oversight. I'm happy to be acquainted with many of you. For those of you whom I have not yet had the pleasure of meeting, and for the record, let me introduce myself. My name is Kirsten Figueroa, and I am proud to be the Commissioner of the Department of Administrative and Financial Services, or DAFS. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. As I understand it, the goals of today's session are informational in nature, an exchange about our statewide Human Resources Management System, or HRMS project. DAFS, as the department that oversees all aspects of human resources, is responsible for everything HRMS. Your intuition that this is a crucial and intricate effort that must be proactively, efficiently, and strategically managed is spot on. I share those beliefs, as does my senior leadership team at DAFS and this entire administration. That said, before we commence speaking about the project itself, let me first address a separate issue. A legislator, as part of a supplemental budget vote in the Joint Standing Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs on March 4th of this year, alleged what he characterized as, quote, probable sexual misconduct, end quote, on the Workday HRMS project. This public announcement was the first time we had been made aware of this alleged impropriety. This administration and DAFS takes these allegations seriously, and after learning of the public pronouncement, we launched a full and complete investigation. The Bureau of Human Resources is working with the Office of the Attorney General on this matter. We are not able to discuss the details of this ongoing investigation, but to be exceedingly clear, any form of harassment may be reported by any personnel, regardless of whether an employee or a contractor is a recipient of harassment, a witness, or otherwise aware of harassment. Complaints of this nature may be filed by contacting any of the following individuals: an immediate supervisor, any supervisor or manager in the chain of command, departmental equal employment officer designee, departmental human resources director, any human resources professional, the assistant state equal employment coordinator, and/or the state equal employment coordinator. Human resources contacts are clearly visible within all state work facilities, such as in break rooms or on the Bureau of Human Resources website. And we have included a full list in Appendix B01 as well, replete with email addresses and phone numbers. I would like to take an opportunity now to thank the members of our Human Resources team who handle such matters with professionalism, care, and in strict confidence. Additionally, this team has been responsible for 2 extensive surveys of state workers in just the past 12 months. The intention was to ascertain a pulse of the state workforce, including contract workers, as they navigate many cultural changes amid the pandemic, including the deployment to telework for the vast majority. Those surveys had impressive participation rates, capturing approximately 7,000 of the state's approximately 11,000 executive branch employees. And results are publicly available on the Bureau of Human Resources website and have been also provided today in Appendix B02 and B03 respectively. Future surveys are planned. In fact, DAF's Bureau of Human Resources is currently beta testing with a few of our smaller departments, a baseline diversity, equity, and inclusion culture survey. Possible next steps include training on cultural diversity and awareness, unconscious bias, and bystander intervention, in addition to listening sessions and focus groups. Subsequent surveys will be administered after program implementation to track effectiveness and identify gaps. This would be in addition to the compulsory trainings on harassment for all state employees, including the already more stringent requirements for supervisors. These are challenging times, and our human resources team remains available to any member of our workforce who has any concern whatsoever. We've also increased the visibility of our already quite visible employee benefits, including our Living Resources program, free to all employees and their families, and offering access to mental health, legal, and other professionals. This program takes care of everything from setting up the appointment to paying the bill, and is an invaluable and frankly underutilized tool available to those who are struggling. I cannot stress this enough. We recognize the dignity of each individual and the right of individuals to work in an environment that is free of intimidation and harassment. HR matters of this gravity are handled with the utmost professionalism and in confidence, and under the full bounds of state and federal labor law and HR employment policies and any union agreements. Thank you. Part and parcel of this administration's strong interest in ensuring that employees are supported, valued, and treated as the professionals they are, we will now pivot to the nuances of the HRMS project, which will be integral for improving employee communication and access, and is the true basis of this request. The request from this committee is to provide a, quote, review of the Workday Human Resources Management System, which we are thrilled to do. As you may or may not be aware, a professional goal of mine, which I outlined in detail to DAF's primary committee of jurisdiction, the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government, at the onset of this legislative session, is to be forthcoming about challenges, some new and some longstanding, that compromise our ability to accomplish the objectives tasked to us by law, and to be a transformative steward of the state's infrastructure, fiscal, human, physical, and technical. As the central nervous system of state government, to describe the positive impact that DAFS is capable of making, we borrow on the concept of technical debt. Technical debt reflects the implied cost of ignoring deficiencies or electing short-term fixes rather than addressing problems at their root and investing in long-term solutions. Technical debt is not carried on the state's balance sheet, but inevitably manifests as a very real financial liability on which interest has accrued. All in all, we do a great job, but when we neglect infrastructure, we do run into problems. Some examples of technical debt include human resources challenges that make certain efforts and projects more difficult, such as vacancies that stretch existing staff thin, turnover that requires constant training or loss of institutional knowledge and expertise, and underfunded projects and/or underpaid staff, which causes low employee morale and burnout. Significantly out-of-date computer systems that make for inherently inefficient processes, incompatibility with supporting systems, technology no longer supported by vendors and/or using computer languages that are no longer taught, vulnerability to cyber attacks and/or technical failure, both of which would seriously jeopardize operations and the data of state agencies and citizens alike, and much more intensive replacement projects when the system being replaced is so far out of date has not been maintained and or does not integrate with modern technologies. It is DAF's responsibility to highlight the critical importance of preserving these infrastructures to ensure stewardship of all state resources and to evaluate, design, and implement sustainable solutions. DAF's is undertaking several inventory projects to highlight the erosion of our infrastructures and developing roadmaps to catch up, keep up, and build up. For instance, we are currently conducting a statewide inventory of computer systems and applications. Part of the reason we cannot respond to newer technologies is because our systems and the patchwork that has been created over time are not compatible with newer technologies. Of course, the inherent danger in highlighting the holes is the expectation of fixes. That is why the development of the roadmaps will be as critical as the reassessments. To show not only that we have a comprehensive understanding of the issues, but to create methodical, sustainable, thoughtful solutions that will hopefully get us to a place where we can preserve our systems and maintain them at appropriate levels going forward. You will hear more about this in a bit, but one example of our work in this area is the Project Management Office within Maine IT, a division of DAF's. The Project Management Office was decommissioned during the previous administration in an effort to reduce employee headcount, and was reestablished just about a year ago by our Chief Information Officer. Ensuring a higher degree of success in technology projects will ultimately save the state time and money, as well as allow us to avoid fits and starts and heartache. We have also vastly improved project communications and access to subject matter experts, which you will also hear me discuss, and are slowly but surely improving the reporting and funding structure for many of these projects. The elimination of the state's technical debt is one of my strongest professional passions, and I hope that you will consider this presentation a paradigm shift as we make progress toward those goals. And it is probably at this point that you may be wondering when we'll get to Workday. We will. This is a long history with the state's HRMS efforts, and since you've asked for that detail, that is where we are headed now. I would like to point out that some of these details are different than what you're reading in the paper. We'll walk through and clarify those line by line. As we describe the state's history with the HRMS effort, you will note that it is full of bumps, sharp corners, some crashes even. Maybe many of these incidents predate me, but frankly, bumps are to be expected in an effort of this magnitude. In the approximately 2 years of our tenure, I am proud that we've been able to keep the current Workday main effort on track. And when it has veered off course or there have been bumps, we've been able to get things back on track and to advocate for and ensure state interests along the way. That said, and as already mentioned, your intuition that this HRMS effort is crucial and intricate and that it must be proactively, efficiently, and strategically managed is correct. And maybe it is strange to be elated by an invitation from an investigative committee of the legislature, but your concerns are part and parcel with our interests, and I am appreciative to have your time for this conversation. DAF's goals for today's hearing are as follows. First and foremost, we aim to be responsive, informative, and transparent to offer our expertise and knowledge to fill in any gaps to help the state continue to move forward with the HRMS effort in a proactive manner. We know that you share those goals and are partners to that end, and we thank you. Second, we intend to provide context, including the business case for why an HRMS is so badly needed, and an overview of the effort to date, which goes all the way back to 2012. Third, we will hone in on the Workday specifically and speak to the state's engagement with Workday, both as a vendor of HRMS software and as a vendor of professional services for the implementation of the software. Workday has played both roles in the effort. We can make that distinction for you and provide full and complete information on that front. Fourth, we will summarize for you much of the information that has already been shared in public hearings with the Joint Standing Committees on State and Local Government and Appropriations and Financial Affairs, outlining the investment and approach necessary to bring this HRMS effort to the finish line. And finally, we're prepared to answer your questions. I've asked members of my senior leadership team to join me today, and they may assist. I'm not sure if you can see them, but I will introduce them now. Heather Perot, as DAF's Deputy Commissioner of Finance, oversees all of our Bureau of Human Resource and Financial Service Center teams who are integral to this effort and is the administration's executive sponsor for the Workday Maine effort, a role we are grateful she took on as part of her appointment as of about 18 months ago. Anya Trundy is our Director of Operations. She's DAF's legislative liaison and should be the connecting link on any follow-up from today's hearing. Fred Britton runs Maine IT as the state's Chief Information Officer, celebrating his second anniversary of employment this month, actually. Maine IT is home to this administration's project management office. CIO Britton is an important member of the Workday Steering Committee and has decades of experience deploying complex technology efforts across organizations. Doug Cotnoir is the State Controller, a division within DAFs that manages all aspects of employee payroll, a key member of the current steering committee, and the longest tenured member of the HRMS effort, going back to 2012 through to today, and privy to many of the bumps and pivots since then. And Jamie Shore, our Director of Procurement Services, a team that has been instrumental in defining the contracts entered for many of the iterations of this effort, including the contract signed in the fall of 2018 with Workday for both the software and professional services. We see today's presentation as a partnership and look forward to the discussion. What is the HRMS replacement project and why is it needed? Again, HRMS stands for Human Resources Management System. The state of Maine's human HRMS effort predates many of us sitting here today and existed long before I became Commissioner of DAFs. Beginning back in 2012, with a different approach and multiple different vendors, mind you, it was not until just before the change in administrations in the late fall of 2018 that the state of Maine engaged with and signed contracts with Workday. While I will not account for 2012 to present month by month, my testimony today does provide a relatively granular timeline of each of the HRMS iterations between then and now. I will briefly touch on each of these pieces as past is prologue, as they say, and being aware of all the work and investment in this effort to date has informed our leadership of this project. This HRMS initiative started back in 2012 as an effort to replace what was then an almost 30-year-old mainframe payroll-only system. The programming language for the mainframe system was even out of use back then and had been for decades. I cannot, of course, speak for the motivations of the previous administration in initiating this effort, but I will state that our assessment at the onset of this administration led us to prioritize the replacement effort of the current HRMS in the same way the previous administration had done. This despite the intricacy, cost, and difficulty of doing so. The business risk of not doing so, to put it lightly, is incredible. We prioritize this project for a number of reasons. First and foremost, our current HRMS, if you want to call it that, is significantly out of date. Replacing the outdated system was long overdue. The LePage administration made a determination to move away from our mainframe-only system, and we all agree with that. The current mainframe system lacks almost all of the functionality of a newer system, meaning many of the processes, our business processes, are still paper-based, which can cause delay and inaccuracy. And the mainframe itself is being held together with duct tape and paper clips, running in a computer code, COBOL circa 1968, that is no longer taught. Not only is there a significant cost to keep the system propped up, there's also a very real potential for failure of the system because there are few programmers who understand or who can use this programming language. The state employed two, one of whom has just retired and one who is close to retirement. Additionally, this old system makes for inherently inefficient processes, a patchwork of multiple legacy software systems that have limited or no integrations with each other, therefore requiring frequent manual and duplicative data entry in multiple systems. incompatibility with subsidiary systems that are no longer supported by vendors and or using computer languages that are no longer taught, considerable administrative burden and or cost for the upkeep and functionality of these legacy systems, risk of catastrophic failure, and vulnerability to cyber attack and or malfunction. I was not exaggerating when I said the existing mainframe is held together with duct tape and paper clips. Our ability to manage the various pay, benefit, training, and other personal support functions for our more than 13,000 state employees is in jeopardy and literally on the verge of failure. Enter a modern HRMS system. A modern HRMS integrates all information used by human resources, as well as managers and supervisors across all facets of an organization for decision-making, and offers benefits that lead to improved HR function and ability to act more strategically instead of being bogged down in minutia. Not only would a modern HRMS ensure that we can track employee time and issue 13,000 payroll checks biweekly, it will also bring additional functionality to replace paper-based, time-intensive processes that are by nature prone to error and slow. Modern HRMS functionality that one could expect from a new system and is severely lacking within our current operations includes employee data management. This will be the most impactful benefit of a modern HRMS, meaning we can track and store demographic details such as employees' names and address, as well as information on benefits in one comprehensive system. For example, tracking leave time earned and used, and benefit enrollment and status changes, and more effectively administer payroll deductions for items such as retirement contributions, health insurance premium, etc. Additionally, we will be able to manage employee data in such a way that we will correctly allocate personnel costs to federal grants in order to obtain reimbursement, removing much of a manual function and allowing us to more closely monitor the financial viability and effectiveness of the programs. Employee self-service. A modern HRMS will enable employees to update personal data without having to involve HR for simple tasks. For example, income tax withholdings, beneficiaries, direct deposit, address changes, and more. Central storage. Because data is stored in one place, this means reporting can be more efficient. It makes access of compliance records simple. It also means there's a central location for documents such as employee handbooks and policy and practice manuals. Fewer systems to manage. We can integrate HRMS to include payroll, training, other financial software, accounting systems, ERP systems, and intranets, for example. Management and tracking of recruiting data, such as applicant and resume management. And on-demand reporting. One of the major benefits of a modern HRMS is that customized reporting can be done on the fly. For example, a manager could query employees by location without having to contact human resources for a manual report that currently takes multiple hours or days to compile. Allowing managers and other leaders and decision makers to access timely information about the employees as related to employee development, performance improvement, and wage detail as appropriate, for example, would vastly improve our operations. I will also note that most modern HRMS operate as a software as a service, or SaaS. This means that in addition to buying the software, you subscribe to the software for any updates and patches. For instance, if the federal withholding form is changed, or a labor law now requires a new calculation for sick time, or any number of updates or modernizations that happen in the HR space, your HRMS is automatically up to date and compliant. This reduces business risk of being out of conformity and also eliminates the need for computer programmers and or policy analysts to create one-off patches for your system, or the disruption to staff and employees of having to revert to a paper process. The Workday SaaS HRMS includes this functionality. A new HRMS is especially relevant for government, as we are a unique HR case study. Public sector leaders are faced with this issue often. Because governments are a single entity that contain multiple types of businesses, all with different HR and payroll requirements, modern HRMS are especially important and their deployments particularly sensitive. Instead of just one business vertical, our HR teams manage multiple business models, from transportation crews to state hospitals, from lab scientists to professional services, and from home and community-based workers to policy analysts and public safety professionals. Additionally, our HRMS effort, unlike most other state efforts, spans all three branches of government, meaning it will integrate various HR policies and more than 13,000 employees from the more than 140 different entities, 4 labor unions and 7 bargaining units within the executive branch, 1 labor union and 4 bargaining units in the judicial branch, and 2 labor unions and 2 bargaining units within the legislative branch, not to mention hundreds of salary schedules, various stipends, and dozens of nuanced special pay types. And the list goes on. In short, there is resounding agreement that we must move state government into the modern technology world for efficiency, for accuracy, for less paper, and to get the payroll processing off a system that is literally on its last legs. The benefits of a modern HRMS are vast, and it is a pleasure to be at DAFS at this time and to be the leader of a team that is on the verge of and will make a modern HRMS a reality for state government. You are also part of that team, and I speak for all state employees when I say thank you for the support the legislature has offered to this important transformative initiative over the course of the last 9 years. Now, let me outline for you our approach to this HRMS effort. As I've touched on briefly already, new technology projects are challenging, no matter the context and skill set of the implementers, and historically even more so within state government and other public institutions. As a longtime public servant and leader within state government, I have borne witness to the difficulty of deploying technology projects in this environment. This is due to many factors. The varied business models in operation under one roof, as I've already outlined. Lack of funding. Technology projects in state government are notoriously under-resourced due to budget constraints, and at least in previous administrations, often spearheaded by an already overtasked manager or a subject matter expert rather than a project management expert. Additionally, and I cannot stress this enough, there is a chasm between off the shelf and the reality of the way the work is actually performed, or the reporting that is actually needed, or the details required for federal compliance, for instance. An off-the-shelf product does not usually work well for multiple business lines and intricacies of an organization so complex. Let's use an example such as QuickBooks. You might buy that software and install it and use it for your pizza shop, but you're not going to run a multifaceted food production and distribution warehouse and retail company on QuickBooks. That chasm between the available products and the real needs and how it is identified, discussed, managed, and triaged is the make or break of a successful system replacement. Bridging this gap is something I'm passionate about and hopefully part of our eventual legacy here at DAFS. For all of these reasons outlined, there's no doubt that an HRMS effort within this organization will require a real rigor, which is to say nuance, expertise, and attention to detail. This is compounded even more so because the state has been attempting to mitigate the risk of the old system and deploy a new HRMS for almost a decade, basically trying to bail water and patch a leak at the same time. Let us review the detailed timeline. As what we have entitled the pre-work phase, the state created a steering committee in 2012 to determine a strategy for the HRMS and contracted with a professional services vendor for same. The following year, in 2013, the state contracted with a subsequent vendor for additional planning, such as calculating total cost of ownership for an HRMS and outlining service delivery. This led to the determination to pursue an HRMS coupled with outsourced business support, and that RFP was issued in 2014. Ultimately, that request for proposal process closed without an award. The scope was tightened, and a subsequent RFP was issued in 2015, but for both a SaaS HRMS and implementation services. That RFP was conditionally awarded in February of 2016 to a vendor named Infor Public Sector. And because a contract of this magnitude does often take months to work through, the contract was officially signed in June of 2016. Work commenced on what was officially known as the Summer Project, that's SOMER, and a go-live date of December 2017 was announced. As work on the Summer Project was proceeding, the go-live date was delayed to December 2018. In March of 2018, a number of deficiencies were identified by the state, communicated with the vendor, and after a months-long remediation period and subsequent contract dispute, the state canceled for cause the Summer Project contract in June of 2018. The financials for these efforts, as we have been able to pull them together over the last 2 weeks, are outlined in Appendix E. I will review the financials in detail shortly. Meantime, let me again mention that a member of my senior leadership team at DAFS, Doug Cotenoir, the state controller, is here with me today. As the subject matter expert on payroll processing and other enterprise systems, he has been and remains highly involved in the HRMS effort since its inception. He's a member of the steering committee and an invaluable member of our team and functions as our de facto resident historian. If you have questions about the historical nuances of the INFR effort, Doug Cotenoir may be able to speak to those. With the summer
Sorry, just to interrupt for just a moment. I did notice you're making reference to various appendices. However, I just wanted to note for you that the committee has not yet received those materials. Our director received the package from DAFS yesterday, midday. We were not able to transmit the documents to the committee yet because of the number and size. So just know that we are still in our process of reviewing those documents and don't have them at our fingertips. Just wanted to make that clear for you.
Okay, all right. Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Technology. just saying. With the Summer Project off the table, I want to give the previous administration props for what they did next. In concert with the Director of Procurement Services, Jamie Shore, also here with us today, realizing it had no time to lose, seeing the duct tape and paper clips falling off the old mainframe, the state quickly pivoted to another HRMS vendor. This time, the state looked to its industry partners and utilized NASPO ValuePoint, the National Association of State Procurement Officials Cooperative Contracting Consortium, which is meant to facilitate competitive vetting and bidding process for the benefit of state departments, institutions, agencies, and political subdivisions, as well as other eligible entities, including cities, counties, special districts, community colleges, universities, and some quasi-governmental and nonprofit organizations. Maine has been successfully participating in this cooperative purchasing program for some time, thanks in part to Jamie Shore's leadership. In addition to Maine, NASPO membership is comprised of the chief procurement officials from 49 other states, Washington, D.C., and the U.S. territories. NASPO ValuePoint uses first-class procurement methodologies to enter into master agreements. Those master agreements are competitively solicited by a team that is comprised of a lead state alongside multiple state procurement representatives and subject matter experts, meant to leverage the expertise and buying power of the many states and other participating entities. In the past, Maine has been the lead state, though in this instance, the state of Utah was the lead. And in concert with NASPO ValuePoint, released an RFP in December of 2015 entitled NASPO ValuePoint Cloud Solutions, and ultimately received 58 valid proposals. The proposals were then scored on cost, business information, organization and staffing, and technical requirements. In this case, technical requirements included strong data security, a minimum expectation that the software run in the cloud environments, and mandated a threshold for meeting National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST criteria. The evaluation committee scored multiple proposals, of which 38 received scores that met or exceeded the minimum point requirements outlined in the RFP, and those vendors were offered master agreements. Some of those 38 vendors offered HRMS and others offered other cloud technology. Some were SaaS, while others were platform as a service or infrastructure as a service. This effort is highly regarded within the procurement industry for having competitively vetted and facilitated a number of quality technology solutions for use by public entities. In 2018, the state of Utah performed a refresh bid on the 2015 RFP. 80 proposals were received, and an additional 33 bidders were offered master agreements. The state of Maine was a participating entity, including sending individuals from the Maine Office of Information Technology to Utah to participate in the evaluation sessions. One of the entities that was awarded a master agreement was Workday, and in fact, Workday was the only vendor in the SaaS category that offered an HRMS. Thanks to this NASPO partnership, from what I understand, in what might be considered record time by state standards, just 4 months after canceling the previous contract on the summer project, by October of 2018, the state of Maine had completed its due diligence on the NASPO value point procurement, including participating in the competitive scoring process and deploying the various public entities to investigate the efficacy of Workday, and had inked 2 separate contracts with Workday, one for HRMS SaaS and another for the professional services implementation. Those 2 initial contracts with Workday, one for SaaS software and another for the professional services implementation, are included in Appendix C01. A process that had previously taken nearly a year was condensed to a quarter of that, and in November of 2018, 2 months before the transition to a new administration, the new project, now referred to as Workday Maine, commenced. The LePage administration announced a deployment date of January 1, 2020, and signed a $15 million contract with Workday for a combination of professional services implementation and SaaS licensing fees. Understandably, considering there were just a few months remaining for that administration, some planning took place, but it really wasn't until January 2019 that Workday Maine got off the ground. It's here that I will pause for a moment to talk jargon. I've been saying all along that Workday is 2 things, but it really is 3. We call the HRMS project Workday Maine. One component of the Workday Maine project is the technology we are deploying, an HRMS software as a service, also known as Workday. Another component of the Workday Maine project is the implementation partner, which is a professional services meant to lead the effort to deploy the technology. In this instance, at least so far, the implementation partner is also Workday. And when I refer to this component, I will try to remember to say Workday Professional Services. With the new administration in place, effective January 3rd, 2019, there have been a full 26 months of Workday Maine under my watch. My assessment at the onset of this administration was that Workday SaaS HRMS was the appropriate choice. Ranked among the top 2 HRMS SaaS offerings nationally, I do believe that Workday is the correct product for the state. And with all large efforts, there is certain functionality we continue to evaluate, and we will look to our implementation partners as we consider those nuances. Workday SaaS will provide vastly increased functionality and information. In addition to time tracking and payroll, it will support many human resource functions that are currently done manually or in a variety of systems that either do not communicate with one another or are themselves outdated. These include recruitment and hiring, employee onboarding, ability for employees to view and manage retirement and health benefits, ability for employees to view and manage vacation and leave balances, and electronically submit time off requests, self-service capabilities for employees, electronic funds disbursement, direct deposit and withholding, ability for managers to view their organization structures, personnel and position information, and for supervisors to manage their employees' schedules and time off requests as a team to ensure operational coverage, as well as tracking employee licensing and certifications. And as we've said, because Workday is a software as a service, going forward, we will always have an up-to-date supported modern system. That's the beauty of SaaS and subscription. Initially in 2018, and then again this year in 2021, Gartner, the most well-known and respected information technology research and advisory company worldwide, ranked Workday and Oracle at the highest end of cloud HRMS software suites for organizations with 1,000 plus employees. In short, the Workday HRMS will give us a modernized approach for managing our workforce and allow for the more effective and efficient management of our most valuable resource, 13,000 state employees across all 3 branches of government, and will allow us to more effectively and efficiently execute the programs and services so critical to Maine people and so reliant on the expertise of state employees. Now let's talk implementation of the Workday SaaS. As I've said, this administration inherited a contract with Workday for both the SaaS and the professional services implementation. With our knowledge of the HRMS bumps in the road, and with a penchant for improving the deployment of these kinds of efforts within state government and knowing how delicate these implementations are anyhow, we have been monitoring and managing the professional services implementation side of the house quite closely. And we went into the effort with eyes wide open, not only with full view of a long history, but also with the knowledge that these projects are hard, and not just here in Maine. Nationally, in 2015, only 58% of technology implementations of this nature with complex human resource functions across an enterprise were considered successful. Through more disciplined planning and recognition of challenges, that has increased to 88% in 2019. Lack of project planning is the #1 failure of these types of systems. Planning must include a full range of business process needs prior to product selection. Like many projects of this nature, there are 3 components of the effort. The executive sponsor, typically a high-level executive who makes decisions, and other state actors such as the Project Management Office and the Executive Steering Committee. The implementation partner, usually a contractor procured with a competitive process, in this case, Workday Professional Services, and a number of state employees and contract workers hired to complete our portion of the project work. These 3 teams have formed over the 26 months of my tenure, which has also involved the following. First, obviously, a new DAFS commissioner. It did take me some time to get up to snuff and conduct a review of this effort. I'm sure you can appreciate that given this crash course we're presenting to you today. Second, I've relied heavily on carryover executive leadership in State Controller Cotnoir and Chief Procurement Officer Shore to get our new executive leadership at DAFS settled in on the project, including our new CIO, Deputy Commissioner of Finance, and new Director of Human Resources, all of whom have been and remain crucial to this effort. As I already mentioned, this administration reestablished the Project Management Office under the direction of the CIO, which has been critical in our ability to advocate for and ensure the state's interests. While still in the maturation stage, research shows that mature project management provides the following for technology projects: 28% improvement in projects completed on time, 24% improvement in projects completed in budget, 22% improvement in projects meeting original goals, 18% improvement in projects avoiding scope creep, 9% improvement in project failure rates, and 10% improvement in budget lost when a project fails. We identified an executive sponsor for the Workday Maine effort who can effectively liaise between the Project Management Office, subject matter experts, our professional services vendor Workday, and the business needs of HR and all of state government to lead and deploy this effort. That person is Deputy Commissioner Heather Perot. When I hired Deputy Commissioner Perot a few months into my tenure, I asked her to rely heavily on a steering committee of executives and to compile a large group of subject matter experts, primarily from the Bureau of Human Resources and the State Controller's Office, who can serve as resources for this effort and to work strategically, deliberately, and methodically to acclimate the team to a professional services vendor and project that was, at that point, very new. The Executive Steering Committee is composed of Heather Perot, Executive Sponsor, Deputy Commissioner of Finance, Brina Bissell, the Director of Bureau of Human Resources, Fred Britton, the Chief Information Officer, Doug Cotnoir, the State Controller, and Doug Bergfeld, the Director of the Project Management Office. In addition to the contracts with Workday, the state also entered into contracts with consultants to assist with specific areas of the project. Kainos for design and execution of certain parts of testing, Premier Data Systems for assistance with data transformation and migration, and Panorama Consulting, a firm that specializes in providing independent validation and verification for large implementation projects. Throughout the project, at the end of each project phase, Panorama Consulting would conduct a review of the implementation effort and present their results to the Executive Steering Committee. Despite identifying some of the same issues that were later found by a separate third-party assessor, Panorama consistently recommended moving to the next project phase, downplaying the significance of many of the problems. Workday Professional Services began leading the State of Maine project team through the planning stage of implementation in late fall of 2018. In mid-January 2019, Workday Professional Services moved the state team into the next phase of the project to define business processes and gain understanding of configuration requirements. Unfortunately, early on in February of 2019, Workday Professional Services confirmed that it could not support the labor cost distribution required by the state, which would break down employee time and benefit costs by department or agency and allow us to track and obtain reimbursement from various funding sources, including significant federal grants. This was a baseline requirement for our business model, and Workday Professional Services had previously characterized in August of 2018 that the product could fulfill this need. When we flagged this issue and engaged with Workday Professional Services to remedy, they agreed to fix this by offering what was basically a free upgrade of our SaaS to include limited functionality within their finance module as a workaround for the length of the initial SaaS contract with Workday through fiscal year 23. In November of 2019, the Executive Steering Committee, in agreement with Workday Professional Services, decided to delay the initially announced go-live date of January 1, 2020, due to a number of concerning areas for which configuration was not yet complete, including labor cost distribution, compensation plans, Fair Labor Standards Act compliance, and time tracking, especially for 24/7 operations such as public safety and our state hospitals. Based on Workday Professional Services assessment of the remaining effort required, a new go-live date of April 1, 2020 was announced. Panorama Consulting, the IV&V vendor, concurred that the new go-live date was quote unquote realistic and achievable. Following the decision to delay the go-live date, and as advised by Workday Professional Services, we evaluated and expanded the scope of the project plan. A change order in the amount of $1.25 million was signed, adding additional testing phases due to the complexity of our payroll, adding support for data conversion, and increasing post-production support services. As part of the project plan, testing of payroll functionality occurred in early 2020. The results of these tests, when compared to how payroll was calculated in our existing system, showed a more than 50% error rate, 5-0. We were in touch with Workday Professional Services repeatedly to check in on this and other issues to finalize the go-live plan. In early March of 2020, as we were inching closer to the deployment date of April 1st, 2020, the Workday Professional Services team continued to indicate that we were on target to meet the launch date. Our team, managing the project closely and highly involved, had growing concerns. And because of these and the failure of the payroll testing, the Executive Steering Committee decided to again delay the go-live of the software against the recommendations of Workday Professional Services. It is at this point that we engaged with the Workday Professional Services team to address our concerns regarding approach and process. We requested that Workday provide more experienced staff to assist in overcoming the challenges the project was facing. You will find many of our concerns itemized in correspondence over the course of many months between myself, Deputy Commissioner Perot, and Workday Professional Services executives in Appendix D. And now it is mid-March of 2020, and frankly, the COVID-19 pandemic sweeps us off our feet for a bit. As a reminder, DAFS, as the central nervous system of state government, is responsible for technology, buildings and grounds, human resources, procurement, budget, revenue forecasting, and tax collection. All of these were significantly impacted by the pandemic. DAFS transitioned staff to remote work, followed the federal government's shifting of tax filing payment dates more than once, provided personal protection equipment to state employees while procuring said for Maine CDC stockpile for our state's healthcare network and for our K through 12 school districts, managed federal relief funds and reporting requirements, made infrastructure improvements such as cubicle changes, plexiglass installation, signage, as well as increased high-touch areas to keep our on-site employees safe, created a plan upon a reforecast of state revenues and processed a more than $200 million budget curtailment, and more. All on top of the normal activities performed by DAF's fewer than 1,100 employees. State government has not stopped during the pandemic. We continue to provide the services and more that Maine citizens expect and are relying on more than ever. Our human resources professionals and IT teams have been phenomenal, led by Brina Bissell at DAF's Bureau of Human Resources, who would have liked to join us today, but is otherwise committed, and CIO Britton at DAF's Maine IT. The expertise and experience of Director Bissell, CIO Britton, and their respective teams have been integral to the success of Workday Maine. And now those same teams are dealing with ramping up communication around safety, telework, and facilities with employees and the multiple labor interests, administering the employee side of the Federal Families First Act legislation, as well as sick and other leave options for employees, all of which involve a high degree of tracking and reporting, authoring and deploying standard operating procedures for a confirmed case of COVID-19 among state employees, creating and implementing new work rules for distancing and face covering, among other things, working through the nuances of multiple new pay types, scaling up technology operations for the Department of Labor's call center and the Maine Center for Disease Control and Prevention's contact tracing, not to mention supporting our workforce as we telework, interact over video conference, rely on more and different technologies, and deal with the stress of a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. The list goes on and is included in Appendix A02. All of this to say, a lot is happening in the Workday Maine project. A lot of what is happening in the Workday Maine project is part of the bumps and growing pains of a complex project, especially an HRMS project. But it is fair to say if our resources had not been otherwise occupied and stretched with the state's response and support of our citizens during the ongoing pandemic, we may have taken some of the steps we're taking now a bit sooner. That said, we continue to work hard, and frankly, I'm incredibly proud that cool heads have prevailed. There have been bumps and rejiggers necessary as expected, but even with so much noise in the background, we've done a fantastic job of not only representing, but also defending the state's interests and the interest of our employees. Beginning in April of 2020, we started working on a change order to completely redefine the statement of work with Workday Professional Services. The statement of work outlines in detail the roles and responsibilities of Workday Professional Services as the implementation consultant guiding this effort, and the State of Maine project team. Significant changes were necessary to address the challenges faced by the project. Between April and May of 2020, the newly reestablished Project Management Office undertook a review of Workday Maine project governance. Recommendations from the PMO included updating the project charter and communication plan, and revisiting and thoroughly documenting all business processes. Workday Professional Services asserted that this review was not necessary and proposed a limited overview. In May of 2020, with almost no notice, Workday Professional Services removed their staff from the project, taking with them their guidance and role as implementers of their software product. We were able to convince them to return after a few days. Little did we know at the time that this would happen again. On May 15th, 2020, on behalf of DAFs, I sent a letter to Workday Professional Services regarding project failure and methodology. In June of 2020, as a result of our request for more experienced staff, Workday Professional Services changed their project leadership. On June 29, 2020, Workday Professional Services submitted an initial draft change order for services through August 2020 with a price tag of $350,000. This change order was only for services to establish a new project plan and timeline and did not include any further implementation of the product. We did not accept this change order and continued to meet with Workday Professional Services to try to define what would be needed to complete this project. In short order, despite being in the throes of the pandemic, we began a procurement process for an independent assessor of the project and established a stakeholder advisory committee, which Workday Professional Services refers to as Department Process Advisory Committee, or DPAC. On September 9th, 2020, we hosted a project restart kickoff meeting held with Workday Professional Services and State of Maine project teams. Between June 20 and September 2020, there were more than 40 versions of a draft change order exchanged. Workday Professional Services continued to fail to meet our expectations or include items we deemed critical to successfully completing the project. We continued to push back as we worked to uphold the original professional services contract and the state's interests. In September of 2020, we interviewed 3 potential contractors to perform an independent assessment of the Workday Maine implementation effort, and also initiated conversations with the Office of the Attorney General around Workday Professional Services contract terms. On September 11th, 2020, the Project Management Office and executive sponsor met with Workday professionals and indicated that the terms of our deliverables-based fixed fee contract required no additional payments for Workday Professional Services to complete the implementation. Workday Professional Services asserted and continues to assert that additional fees are due because the scope of the project has changed. We disagree. We do not have a new HRMS that meets the requirements outlined in the contracted statement of work, as amended by various change orders. In November of 2020, Workday Professional Services had another leadership change within the project. Also in November 2020, we selected representatives from IJA Strategies, a firm that specializes in consulting on Workday implementations, to independently assess the implementation effort. We conducted this review due to the continued lack of progress with Workday Professional Services and growing lack of trust in their assessment of the completeness and readiness of the implementation. The assessment from IJA is included in Appendix F01 and shows considerable components outstanding on a number of terms included in our original professional services agreement with Workday Professional Services. Throughout IJA's engagement, Workday Professional Services had repeatedly contacted IJA and had been pressuring them to share their report before it was presented to the Executive Steering Committee. On February 12th, 2021, Workday Professional Services removed its staff from the project again, and again with almost no notice. On February 25th, 2021, we sent a letter to Workday Professional Services to alert them of potential termination and a $22 million reimbursement request. It is not lost on me that this sounds a bit like volleyball. We do have complete records and are able to pinpoint all of the back and forth. We are managing this project in an organized, structured way, and we have an excellent team. We have great leadership and solid decision-making in place. The team and I feel confident to say it was a mature, reasonable, informed decision for management to not go live when we realized that the system as presented and being tested was not going to work and did not include the key components critical to a successful launch. Our correspondence with Workday Professional Services to rectify a number of issues with the launch of the SaaS has devolved, frankly, and instead of engaging with us to remedy, Workday Professional Services removed their staff and guidance from our implementation effort. It is a sad turn of events, but is likely for the better. Both of our contracts with Workday for the SaaS and the professional services are still technically in place. That said, we intend to cancel the professional services agreement and have indicated as much to Workday Professional Services. They feel strongly that the contract should not be canceled for cause and have made statements to the media saying as much, though we do have indications that they are not interested in continuing as our implementation partner. We are working with the Office of the Attorney General on this contract dispute, and the terms of the dissolution are still being negotiated. It goes without saying that the Office of the Attorney General's goals are to protect the state's financial interest and the efficacy of this important and time-intensive effort as that contract unraveled. The state has requested $22 million from Workday Professional Services. This amount exceeds payments made to Workday Professional Services and instead is meant to recover amounts paid to Workday Professional Services, plus cover costs incurred by the State of Maine project team, and also provide funding for unplanned but extremely necessary maintenance for our legacy payroll systems. Once the professional services contract is officially canceled, we will be able to move forward in selecting a new implementation partner. There are firms around the world who do this type of work with track records to prove it, from the likes of Deloitte to this IJA Strategies that we used as the third-party assessor and many others. We will be using a competitive procurement process with clearly defined terms. Despite these delays, bumps, and the impacts of the pandemic, this administration's work on Workday Maine continues. We've taken a number of new steps to ensure against some of the bumps in the past, including increasing frequency and transparency of communications across all levels of the project, moving executive steering committee meetings from monthly to biweekly in order to address issues more immediately, establishing strict escalation requirements for decision-making to ensure decisions are getting made at the right level and by the right people, dramatically increasing engagement with business owners, such as leaders of various state agencies and HR partners. While this has put significant strain on these resources, their involvement in detailed discussions has been invaluable. And increasing agency participation and project knowledge of detailed requirements by establishing a stakeholder advisory group and business process mapping documentation. Under my leadership, we are employing best practices for all technology projects, including Workday Maine. To me, this project management discipline will be the differentiating factor that finally eliminates some of the accumulated technical debt and shifts the paradigm for technology deployments in state government. I truly believe this to be one of the most important legacies we can leave behind, a true cultural change and feat of leadership. These best practices include standards-based project management controls, a documented matrix for requirements traceability that allow business needs to directly and verifiably align to expected technological functions, phase gates to assure each phase of the project passes established standards before the next phase is undertaken, a transparent escalation path for identified risks to be addressed by executive leaders, a dynamic schedule tied to success dependencies so that we have visibility into current and future challenges before they become issues, frequent and detailed status reporting, an evidence-based change control process to accommodate possible adjustments to scope that weigh the cost versus the benefit of those requested changes, active and frequent independent validation and verification of structures, processes, and outcomes to inform the project about what is working well and what needs improvement, organizational change management and training program to prepare staff and managers in the best use of new system functions before they are released, and a system users group to collect useful feedback from stakeholders and the system user community to assure that the technology delivered supports the needs of each department and branch while achieving maximum standardization. As I have said, Workday Maine has suffered its fair share of bumps, sharp corners, and breakdowns, and there will be more inevitably, but there has not been fraud, waste, and abuse of funds. Throughout, DAFS has been and will continue to be good stewards of the state's interests. We have employees working on this effort who are not only dedicated and passionate, but skilled professionals with certifications and resumes and accomplishments that make me feel confident in our ability to see this incredibly important effort through to the finish line. The complexity cannot be overstated, nor can the importance of an engaged implementation partner. And as I have said, your intuition that this is crucial and intricate is spot on. Most recently, in the middle of last month, even despite our implementation partners walking off the job and the related contract dispute, the state's Workday Maine implementation team began conducting approximately 9 weeks of business process mapping to review existing business requirements and identify gaps. The goal of these work sessions is to provide a forum where subject matter experts can provide their knowledge of work processes on a detailed how-to level. The product of these work sessions will achieve several results: accurately documenting business processes to communicate system requirements, provide the necessary documentation against which to compare the results of testing, aid in training new team members, and provide a basis for continuous process improvement. This work is being completed based upon recommendations included in the independent assessment by IJA Strategies and IJA's review of the state's Workday configuration. This assessment identified multiple gaps and recommended specific action for alignment with best practices. Overall, the results were positive. However, one significant deficiency identified through the assessment was that project decisions were not adequately documented, and some decisions were not fully vetted across all affected groups and processes. To confidently deliver a system that meets the needs of all business stakeholders, we need to make sure we have the right people in the room to collect the right level of detail. This business process mapping effort will be supervised by a number of key stakeholders, including a number of members of the Workday Maine Steering Committee. The business processing mapping team includes Douglas Cotnoir, State Controller, Brina Bissell, Director of the Bureau of Human Resources, and Beth Ashcroft, former Director of OPEGA and current State Budget Officer. These business process mapping members are committed to a full review of business requirements in collaboration with representatives from the judicial and legislative branches, with whom the Workday Maine team has engaged as part of this process, holding regular meetings to specifically hone in on the business needs of these two branches of government. These senior leaders and their staff will identify individuals who perform the relevant tasks daily to lend their expertise. The absence of an implementation partner has not impeded our ability to clean and aggregate data in our old systems or data currently being stored in various databases and spreadsheets, so that the data can be as accurate and up-to-date as possible when we're ready to resume with a new implementation partner. Another effort that's underway as a result of the findings of the independent assessment is a review of the multiple current systems that contain information, usually contradictory, related to supervisor and organization structure, and devising a method to keep this crucial operational data up to date for go live. Needless to say, this work will keep the team exceptionally busy for at least another couple of months as we sort out the next phase of implementation. I would be remiss if I did not mention that this work is being conducted with the backdrop of news out of Maryland. Perhaps you've already heard that recently the city of Baltimore implemented Workday too soon, without taking into account the nuance of 24/7 operations or various labor cost distribution efforts. When I read about the debacle, I was oddly proud that DAFS has been diligent stewards of the effort here in Maine. At Baltimore, city government Everyone from contact tracers to police officers are not getting their paychecks, and firefighters are having issues with health insurance. It was so bad that according to news reports, quote, a coalition of Baltimore City public employee unions sent a letter to city officials claiming a breach of union contracts as a result of the problems, including widespread pay inaccuracies, issues with direct deposit, and retirees being unable to receive health care benefits, end quote. When we launch Workday Maine, there will be bumps, and there will be more bumps between now and then. But our goal is to avoid that widespread issue like what is happening in Baltimore. That, in my opinion, is what would warrant an investigation. Finances. An Appendix E includes an overview of finances for all of the HRMS projects, including all costs related to the Workday Maine project, as well as costs related to the HRMS projects that predate Workday Maine. The document should look familiar to you as it is very similar to one provided just a couple of weeks ago. For clarity, we have added some older detail, itemizing costs beginning in 2012, and have adjusted the column labels so that they align with the phases that we've been defining here: pre-work, summer project, and Workday Maine. That said, the figures remain consistent with those previously provided. Our aim in doing this was to provide even more granular detail and transparency. Approximately $14.3 million was invested in the early portions of the HRMS effort, including on the pre-work initial consulting contracts between FY12 and 15, and the summer project between FY16 and FY19. A total of approximately $20 million has been spent on Workday Maine to date, spanning 2 administrations. The $17.6 million between FY16 and FY20 includes expenses for the various items we have discussed today already: state employees and contract staff, various support vendors, as well as $7.6 million in payments to Workday professional services for implementation. The $2.4 million spent this fiscal year is for costs of the state project team, the legacy system, and other support vendors who have continued working on the project. No payments have been made to Workday professional services for implementation since March of 2020. The FY21 supplemental budget included 2 enacted initiatives as of yet unspent: authority to borrow up to $8 million through a certificate of participation, and approximately $4.7 million from the general fund for Workday Maine implementation, operating, and subscription costs, as well as ongoing costs to maintain our out-of-date systems. Finally, the fiscal year 22-23 supplemental budget proposal will contain initiatives of approximately $8.5 million. These efforts were included in the governor's originally submitted proposal for the 22-23 biennium, and were outlined to the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government and to the Joint Standing Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs on March 3rd as part of the biennial budget process, but were not included in the biennial budget recently passed. You will find my testimony in Appendix A03. It is at this point that I should walk back testimony to offer a slight nuance. Considering the ongoing contract dispute, I want to be clear that this $8.5 million figure is the anticipated investment meant to allow us to complete implementation and provide funding for maintenance, subscription fees, debt service, and support. That said, we will be requesting that any new implementation partner corroborate and/or suggest adjustments to this figure, and we will be sure to provide details if there are changes. Appendix E shows that the total investment in Workday Maine through FY23 is estimated to be approximately $41 million, and that the state's total investment in HRMS, inclusive of all phases beginning in 2012, is estimated to be approximately $55.4 million. Our understanding is that a comprehensive HRMS product and implementation can cost, depending on the size of the organization, as much as $100 million. And that's before the customer implementation costs, the state technology costs, project teams, support vendors, which has already been included in our calculations. Despite the bumps in the road, we expect a product cost that is much lower than the industry standard for a system with this set of features and complexity. To be clear, we do anticipate a modest investment moving forward, even after the project is implemented, for subscription and support fees, for instance, as well as costs to ensure that the new infrastructure is cared for and maintained appropriately, and the state's investment is protected. Those costs are included in the FY23 budget initiative and will ensure the needed funding going forward is a part of our baseline budget. The rows below the chart outline the funding resources for the project, and Appendix E includes the copies of the financial orders and budget pages referenced. This is our best understanding of the funding and expenditures right now, and we continue to examine some of the details that predate this administration. There are a number of appendices beyond those mentioned that you may find helpful. In the materials responsive to your request, you will find copies of correspondence, the findings from the IJA Strategies Independent Assessment, and the Panorama IV&V assessments, as well as a number of human resources materials and all of the Workday Maine related contract documents. This testimony will be there as well and can be referenced for timeline details. We have worked hard to provide as full and complete information as possible and would be happy to walk through any of the details. We've organized the files in the same order as requested and feel they align closely with the narrative offered today. We expect a superior product that improves accuracy, performance, and decision-making, and which is not held together with duct tape and paper clips. Workday's SaaS is highly rated and well on its way to becoming what it needs to be for us here in Maine. Considering our strong interest in changing the paradigm of how technology projects are deployed across state government, I will restate how proud I am to be the leader of this team that is to have such an impressive impact on state employees and operations. And let me say again, especially considering the heightened workload of the pandemic, but even without it, this team is amazing. In less than 2 years, we have made it almost to the finish line of a behemoth effort that was 7 years in the making. I am unsure if it would be more appropriate for this committee or for DAF's Committee of Jurisdiction, the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government. But either way, it would be our pleasure to join the legislature for regular updates on this endeavor. We will have a more crisp estimation of the Workday Maine timeline once a new implementation partner comes on board. The goal remains 2022, and we believe that we can get there by then within the current investments as outlined, including the initiatives to be included in the 22-23 supplemental. That said, this effort is not about hope. It is about accuracy, rigor, transparency, planning, and testing. As we bring a new implementation partner on board, we will share our hopes, and we will look to those professional implementers to translate that hope into a methodical plan for success. Like you, we know this is an important effort, and we share your concerns for a timely, accurate, efficient, and frugal go live. We know Workday Maine will transform Maine government, and once again, thank you for your interest, partnership, and support of the effort. In the meantime, my team and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have for us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Figueroa, for your very thorough and detailed testimony. For committee members, it looks like Lucia was able to drop the testimony that Commissioner Figueroa delivered into the chat box. I also noticed midway through our discussion this morning that it's also in your email inbox. That was just sent over. We've got a couple of folks who have questions or comments, and so I'll take them in the order that they raised their hand on my screen. We'll begin with Senator Timberlake, followed by Senator Bennett, and then Senator Bailey. Senator Timberlake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner, for being here. I guess I'm a little bewildered. It was a long, very long testimony of the where-to-fors and the wherefores, But without having all of that information before me that the commissioner was referencing, it's very hard to follow along with everything that was happening. So I guess I haven't looked in my inbox to see that it showed, because I had asked to have that stuff from Heather printed off. I mean, it wasn't there then, but it must be now. I would have thought that we would have had this before today's meeting and not during the middle of it. It's kind of hard to follow along with this. It's, I don't know, it's kind of overwhelming. And so I think we need to take time to review the information that has been sent to us. And I would have liked to seen it yesterday at least, but this is where we're at, so. I'm gonna leave it at
Senator
that.
Timberlake, I just want to reiterate something I said at the beginning of or perhaps I interjected in the middle of the presentation. Lucia received an email yesterday afternoon with a link to go onto SharePoint to download the materials that we requested. The number of documents, I think, was over 25, and some of them were over 125-page PDFs at many megabytes. So we attempted to figure out how to get those materials transmitted to the committee, but they would not fit in an email. And so we, on our end, I think, made an effort to try to get them over, but obviously having them in front of us would have been much more helpful for our conversation today. But I just want to note it was not the fault of any of the OPEGA staff in getting those materials to us.
And Mr. Chair, I would agree with you. I don't blame the OPEGA staff. I think the DAF should have got them over to us 2 or 3 days ago to have them here, because we knew this was coming. And that was more of my comment. I think the OPEGA staff has done a good job with what they had to work with. So I'm not blaming them in any part whatsoever, but this is a lot of information and we should have had it. So that's just my comments, and I'm going to go quiet now.
Thank you, Senator Timberlake. Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, nice to meet you. I don't think we've met before in person and or by Zoom. I found that to be just extraordinary testimony, and like Senator Timberlake, we really need to look at the details. Personally, in 1 minute, I have to go defend a bill in work session. I was hoping we could get to questions before that, but really the issue is that I need to be able, like the rest of the committee, to review in detail all of the referenced items before I think we have another session with the commissioner to ask the questions that are germane to our work. And so I would recommend that, and apologies for having to depart in 1 minute. I would really like to be sure, however, as I leave, that we do have an opportunity coming up to review the material and then ask our questions then. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bennett. I'm obviously open to having an additional session with enough intervening time for committee members to review the materials that were sent to us. Senator Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner, did I understand you correctly to say that while the ongoing contract dispute with the Workday professional services is going on, that you will not be pursuing another implementation partner?
Right. Thank you. Well, we will be pursuing the options that we have, and we will be having to coordinate the documents that we'll use to have our competitive process, but we need to finalize the one before being able to officially start the other. But there will be overlap because we won't wait to do the prep work.
Okay, that's what I wanted clarification on, is that you're kind of doing a parallel track. And as a follow-up to that, do you have an estimate from the Attorney General's office as to kind of the worst case scenario in terms of how long this contract dispute might go on?
I don't believe that we have that kind of estimate. I think we're in the stages of working it out. I think we will be able to work it out. And I hear your point that I may have misstated that. I guess I would have to understand how we would be able to continue working that through and still be able to move forward with the project. So I maybe should confirm we probably could have two implementers at the same time, just the one that we're phasing out and the one that we're starting to work with. So let me update that for you.
Thank you. And again, I'm trying to understand kind of the planning going forward, and ensuring that there is planning going forward. So if you could clarify that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, of course. You're right. We wouldn't be not being able to move forward, I'm sure, while we sort everything out if it took a long time. I do want to just, if I may, I apologize for the technology that we have huge documents that we tried to transfer. We tried to use the SharePoint. They were sent over at 11:15 a.m. yesterday after we needed to get permission for some of those documents to be provided by Workday, which we received Wednesday. It was a huge document request, and we did our very best to get that information to you within the 2 weeks that we've learned of the request. And I do hope that those documents will be able to be relayed to you soon. And, you know, as we indicated, we would be willing to come, but we're happy to come back when you've had a chance with them to continue the discussions.
Thank you. For the benefit of the committee, it looks like Edda has been working on getting those documents uploaded to our website. It looks like she's been able to upload 46 of them so far. So I had said 25 or more. I was definitely very far off. There's still more that needs to get uploaded. And Commissioner Figueroa, I appreciate your willingness to come back to the committee. I know you can appreciate our position of trying to understand the complexities of this very big project and feeling like we don't have all of the reference points that you have. So we do appreciate your willingness to come back when we've had some time to review them. I know as well you would avail your staff to ours to help guide our staff in orienting to the more than 46 documents to help us sort of expedite our review work. I think that'll be important for committee members to have that that support so that we're not all reading all 46 plus documents. Representative Arata has her hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Figueroa, thank you for coming before this committee. It's nice to see you again. Wow, what an incredibly frustrating process this must have been. Is there litigation pending or ongoing at this time?
No, it's not litigation. It's just that we need to agree formally and officially that Workday Professional Services will no longer be our implementation partner. We're hoping obviously that it doesn't become litigious. We just have to work through that, similar to how the previous administration worked through it with the Infor vendor.
You're hoping for a return of $22 million. So that's something you're working on in the process. You're in the process of now.
We have made that as a request of Workday Professional Services. Yes.
So you're in the process of hopefully avoiding litigation.
Yes. Yeah.
And they think that you owe that they think the state of Maine owes them money, and we think that they owe us money, which isn't a lot different from working with contractors sometimes on remodeling projects.
Right. I mean, we're still working out the details of those discussions, but the state of Maine has the statement of work and the contracts that we entered into and the requirements outlined in those contracts, and the Workday Professional Services has not met the terms of those contracts. And so we are in the spirit of needing to move to a successful HRMS Workday SaaS system. We need to engage in a new implementer and have that implementer help guide us to that. And in the meantime, finalize the details of the relationship that we once had with Workday Professional Services.
And because there is a possibility of litigation, have any of the documents, the communications and other documents been withheld from submission to the GOC? Due to confidentiality at this time?
Oh, well, that's what I was referring to, is that we were, there had been a FOIA request. I'm not sure from whom, but while we were responding to that FOIA request, we had to ensure that Workday was okay with the response, and they had to sign off. And like I said, we had just received that sign off at the end. So no, everything that went out as was requested was approved by Workday and has been sent. And you all got copies of all of that FOIA.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. And just real quick, by implementation, I'm not a real technical person. So by implementation, do you mean database work, training, things like that? Or is it much more complex? I mean, I know there's some specific programming that they'll have to do to meet the needs of the state of Maine, but otherwise, is it mostly data entry and training?
Oh, well, it's everything. It's having the agreement with that Workday SaaS product, and then how do you turn that product into the thing that the state of Maine can use with all of the complexities that it has, as we outlined with all the different payroll. So it's, and I'll let Fred Britton, our CIO, talk in more detail, but it is all of those things that you mentioned. It's first getting that product online, testing that product will work, right? Doing our parallel testing like we discussed. But Fred, how about you taking that one for me, because everybody's sick of listening to me talk at this point anyway.
Thank you. I'd be happy to.
Thank
There are a number of elements, as the commissioner said. There is, first off, multiple systems that have data that has been sort of cobbled together over many years, some of it coming together at points where various agencies had their own systems. So, right, there's a lot of discrepancies there. So a lot of data conversion. There's a lot of connections between systems that will have to be duplicated. Things like connections out to banks, insurance carriers, other sorts of benefit systems, third-party systems that have to be duplicated, tested heavily. Through all of it, there is the ongoing data conversions as our existing system has to keep functioning. And we have challenges around when is the right time to cut over, because there's fiscal year changes that have big impacts. There's tax year changes when we start thinking about W-2s. So those are a number of elements that occur. The testing, as the commissioner said, is absolutely key. And that was where we discovered that we had an awful lot of problems in that parallel payroll testing when we run hours through an old system and say, what would this person get paid? And then we do it again in the new system and say, what would they get paid? And there's a lot of discrepancies. So a lot of data issues there. And so it is programming. It's heavy configuration of a system. And so that's where we look to an implementation partner for an awful lot of guidance on how to do that. So I hope that answers your question.
Somewhat. I mean,
and communication, just like you said, and communications and training of the staff that will use the system, and those are all components as well.
I assume that since it's a cloud-based program, that most of the programming would be done in California, on their end. Right. Okay. Nodding. Good. All right. Maybe I'm not quite as ignorant as I thought, but I don't know. I'm getting there. All right,
No.
thank you for answering my question.
Not at all. And also, I would like to give Heather Perot an opportunity if it's okay for her to chime in on that as well, because she has some of those details. Are you there, Heather?
Yes, thank you very much, Commissioner. Also, in addition to all of the technical things that we have to address, one of the most basic things that we have to start with on a project like this is figuring out, what do we do now? What do we need to do? And how can we use this new tool to do it better? And that's part of the business process mapping sessions that the commissioner referenced that are going on right now. Obviously, we did some of this work at the beginning of the project, but as was found by the assessment by IJA Strategies, there were some gaps in that work, and that's what we're trying to fill in now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm done.
Further questions or comments from the committee? I have a couple of questions. Commissioner Figueroa, Workday Professional Services was hired in 2018, is that correct?
Yes.
And prior to signing that contract, did you have a sense of what other state governments had hired Workday Professional Services to conduct the implementation project for Workday? Were there other states that had used Workday Professional Services for the same scope of work that we had, I suppose is my question, stated differently.
Okay, so as a reminder, in 2018, I wasn't here to sign that contract. But your question is, in 2018, when Workday was selected, had Workday also been doing the similar type of work at other states? If Jamie Shore is our procurement officer, so maybe she could help with the specifics of that.
Yes, good morning. Workday Maine was in other states, and there was a process at that time whereby there were some key stakeholders within DAFs that actually flew to a couple of different states to see what Workday was doing. And I would have to go back and try to recall the states. I feel like Ohio, Maryland, there were 3 different locations that this team actually flew and met with state government officials to see what the Workday project, there was one that was already implemented, and there was one that was in the process of being implemented. And those locations I can certainly provide to the committee by the next time we meet.
That would be helpful.
I'm getting secret, I'm getting a text that says Colorado was one of the states, Jamie.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Colorado was one of the states that had fully implemented Workday using Workday Professional Services.
Doug, are you able to talk a little bit about this? If not, then we will get more information, but I think Doug might be able to, but he specifically asked about full implementation.
Right. No, the Colorado had not fully implemented. They were they had fully selected and engaged the contracts, but they were in the process of working on their project at that time.
I guess what I'm trying to get a sense of is, were we one of the first states to engage Workday Professional Services on implementation, or were there other states who had gone through that process? From the commissioner's testimony, it obviously seems like the services provided by Workday Professional Services were grossly inadequate. I'm just wondering what signals there were prior to signing that contract from other states that either this was a good company to work with or not. It sounds like
Jamie, Jamie, as part of that value point discussion that we had, are you able to speak to the experience levels that some of the vendors might have had as they were being evaluated? I assume that is part of the scoring. Would you?
Sure. So that was part of the scoring methodology in during the refresh bid that Utah performed. As Commissioner, you mentioned, the evaluation committee looked at 80 plus proposals during that refresh, and Workday was scored in all 4 of the categories, from cost, technical capabilities, their qualifications and experience, etc. And the evaluation committee felt strongly that Workday met all of the criteria set forth in the RFP. In addition, there are a number of other states that have signed what we call participating addendums to be able to sign contracts with Workday based on their references and experiences. So just like Maine was participating in the Utah RFP, other states signed on and utilized that process as well. I think it's more than 43 states that have participated in that solicitation. And so, Senator Libby, to answer your question, yes, there was a level of due diligence that was performed, and there were other references that were checked. Workday Maine is one of the top 2 or 3 vendors in the country that provide the HRMS service and the SaaS product and the professional services.
When you say that the similar name gets confusing, so I'm using the term Workday Professional Services to describe the implementation services. Jamie, you just said Workday Professional Services was one of the top ranked providers in the country. Is that correct?
So the Workday SaaS product, the software product, is one of the top 2 or 3 HRMS cloud solution SaaS products in the country. As part of that SaaS offering, right, just like a menu is offered, they have their professional services, among other things, that they have offered to various states as part of this solicitation at a discount. And professional services is one of those categories. And yes, other states have utilized Workday professional services in conjunction with the HRMS SaaS software product. And so the specifics of the various states that you were asking about, Colorado, Maryland, et cetera, that's the information that we can get further detail for you next time we meet.
Understood. Just to be clear and to make sure there's no confusion, I'm interested in the states that have employed the Workday implementation services, who we knew about before signing the contract, perhaps if you're able, who has signed up post-contract signing, because it appears DAFS is committed to the software product. Our challenge is with the service provider who's going to be implementing the service.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Figueroa, a second question from me. It appears that March 2020 was a key turning point in the relationship between the state and the vendor. Is that a fair recollection of your very detailed and lengthy testimony? It was the first point where the communication appeared to be breaking down, the relationship appeared to be breaking down?
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, there was a disagreement on the April 1st go live date between the state and the contractor.
Yes.
At that time, the state responded, as using your words, to completely redefine the statement of work, which is sort of like the scope of work. Is that correct?
Yes.
Then the vendor responded by switching out the team or recalling the team that they had deployed. Is that correct?
I'm going to ask Heather to start to be the one, because she's got the.
Yes, of course. We had.
Wait, I think. Can you just state again what your question was, Senator Libby?
Yep, I'm just trying to confirm the different pieces of the timeline. So March was the disagreement between the state and the vendor on the go live date. We've confirmed that. It was at that point that the state, to quote your testimony, Commissioner, completely redefined the statement of work. And I believe we've concurred that that took place. Then the vendor took some action with respect to recalling their team or stopping work. I just want to confirm that I have the order of events correct. And that's to you, Heather.
Okay, so yes, Heather, just a second, but I think we would also want to say that we have not finalized that complete rework, right? That's the 40 plus pieces of paper that have gone back and forth. So Heather, can you just confirm that for me?
That's correct. It was in March or April that we started to try to redefine that statement of work. And that is a big piece of what we have failed to come to agreement on. We did ask for a change in project management from Workday Professional Services at that time. They changed a couple of the leadership positions. It was in May that they withdrew their entire team for a period of time.
At what point, when was the last payment made to the vendor for these implementation services?
I believe it was in March 2020.
Was the recall of the team related to the stoppage of payments?
No.
What was the rationale given for the recall of the team by the vendor?
I'm going to stretch my memory here. I'm going to say that it was related to the fact that we didn't have an agreed upon project plan and statement of work to move forward with.
Reference back the fact that we had, over the course of several months, been trying to come up with a revised statement of work, and that piece of paper that had gone back 40 times back and forth, or whatever stage it was in at the time. It became more than 40 after the walk-off, but.
Yeah, Workday Professional Services withdrew their staff based on the fact that they said they were working at risk because there was not a new statement of work in place. We stressed with them the fact that they needed to be a partner with us at the time, which is why they returned to the project. But as the commissioner referenced, we continued to go back and forth on trying to define a new statement of work and have not been successful.
Would you say the source of the dispute has more to do with the details of the scope, or more to do with the vendor requiring additional money and the state perhaps not wanting to pay anything else? Or both, or different?
I think it's both. We've been pretty clear that we feel that they have an obligation to complete the deliverables that are defined in the contract. And it was a fixed fee contract based on those deliverables.
Which they have not delivered.
And
the relationship, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
So that relationship that we were working out and trying to get to a place where we come to a different document that clearly outlines how we are going to get to the thing that was originally agreed to in 2018. We never got there, and because we never got there, there was never additional movement on Workday Professional Services ability to move us further with the implementation. The Workday main staff, as we indicated, have continued to be able to do work, data conversion, business process mapping, et cetera. But we can't move forward on implementing the Workday SaaS without the implementer doing the things that the implementer agreed to do. So your previous comment about the state having determined that Workday SaaS is the right product, but the implementation partnership is not, is accurate in where we are now.
Understood. And my final question, Commissioner, is, I'm trying to get a sense of how close the state is to completing this project. And so could you give me a percent completion as of today? Are we 80% there, higher or lower? Do you have a sense of that?
I don't know if we have a sense of that. I don't know that we would. I'd like to answer the question. And so I'd like to have my team be able to think about that and talk about it. One of the things that we know is that we thought, based on information that we were receiving from our implementer, that maybe we were a little bit further along with our data conversion. And then we tested the data and it was, as we mentioned, more than 50% fail rate. So I think in an evaluation now of where we kind of thought we were in the project according to the implementer and where we are now, those percentages are different. And so but I don't know about, I think you know what I mean? There are so many different components to it. There are probably parts that are closer to 90%, but there are probably other parts that are less. And so what's the average? I think that's an interesting way to answer and talk about the project. And I'd like an opportunity to be able to kind of do that offline and present it back to you.
Just trying to get a sense, since we're not on the inside as you folks are, how close we are to go live. I think hearing this 8, 9, 10-year history obviously is a point of frustration for everyone who's interested in this, and getting a sense of how close the finish line is just helpful reference.
Well, of course, some of that information would be also was given to us by the IJA strategies information, which I'm not sure if it's one of the ones that's downloaded yet, but if I might refer to that more outlined a little bit more concisely about the requirements traceability matrix, which is a little bit fancy language, but kind of says, okay, here's what the original deliverables were, and here's how far we would say you are with those. So that would give information kind of to how far along we are. I'm not sure that answers though, how, right, exactly the percentage of what we have left, but we will, we can do that work and inform you and let you know.
Thank you.
And I also, I'm sorry, I do want to just say, like I said, we continue to have a goal of 2022. We need a qualified partner implementer to help us with whether that is a good solid goal. I feel like I just want to say that although it is good to have goals, and there is a reason that this project has taken this long. It's not unusual for organizations that don't have consistent funding, right? Every 2 years, we kind of have to ask for a little bit more. And before you even embark on something, so you could hear from the testimony that the first, 2012 to 2015 was a lot about how would we even go about this? How would we even decide to do it? What should we be thinking about first? So none of that is wasted time. It feels like forever, I'll give you that, but it was not wasted, and all valuable lessons learned on what do we think would be the right direction for the state. And although we want to have a goal and we want to transition off of a mainframe system that nobody's, right, no one uses mainframe anymore for a reason, we want, more importantly than setting the date and meeting that date, would be making sure that when we flip the switch, we are processing payroll and timesheets and that information for state employees as accurately as we possibly can before we turn the switch on.
Thank you. Senator Timberlake.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Chair, this question's, I guess, probably more aimed to you and the committee. I think my question is something I learned a long time ago from my grandfather and my dad was, there's always like two sides to every story in the life. And is there some point in time that we should at least have Workday give us a chance to give what their side of the story is and where they're at and where we're and what they believe that we could be headed or what they believe could be accomplished? Just a thought out there. I learned a long time ago that when I only went one way, it didn't always work out for my better half. I was sometimes guess somebody wrong.
Thank you, Senator Timberlake. I'm certainly open to hearing from a stakeholder like that in this conversation.
Thank you.
Senator Keim has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I had a few questions. One, just to help me confirm, Jamie, are you the only one here today that has been here throughout the process?
No, the state controller, Doug Cotnor, has also been here throughout the process, and actually longer than I have.
Okay, so you've both been here throughout the process with Workday, though. Okay, that's helpful to know, just in case we have questions about sort of going back. I think it's helpful for that. And then, so the IJA strategies, I just want to confirm what I think I heard is they did an independent review of the process. Is that right? Is that what they were hired to do?
Yes.
And so when they did that review, were they also looking at the organization within DAS itself and trying to see if there were issues, how the organization and the people in the organization were working themselves with the implementer to try to look at relationships and sort of analyze that as well? Or was it simply more looking just at data?
Heather, can you specifically speak to the language of the engagement with IJA?
Yes, I would have to review the language to refresh my memory, but they were looking not just at data, but they were looking at how the system was being configured and how Workday and the state of Maine were each taking care of their responsibilities for that. They were able to identify gaps in methodology, but it wasn't so much about the relationship between Workday and the state of Maine project team.
And again, I hope that your data load has completed, but we would refer you again to that IJA assessment because they talk about what their specific engagement was and then what they found. I was trying to find the words that we used. I mean, it was definitely about understanding where we were in the deliverables of the project.
Okay. And so, okay, so I will definitely look through that. And then, but it's your understanding that they would have also looked at individual roles, both of the implementing team and then on like the Maine state side and the roles that each were supposed to be fulfilling.
It was the overall project methodology. Yes. So that would include, yeah.
And how long did their review take?
hold.
I believe it took about 2.5 months.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Khan. Are there other questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, what would the committee like to take for next steps on the subject? Senator Timberlake.
I think one of the things we got to do is be able to review those documents, and also I would like to see if Workday would be willing to participate in having a discussion with us on their side of the story. And then I don't know if we want to do it in a separate meeting or what, but after we've had a chance to review the information that the commissioner has given us, because she gave us a lot of really depth, and she did a great job today of presenting it. Information that we want to have just a meeting just about this and not mix it up with everything else at the time, or I don't know, but I would really like to hear from the other side and make sure that that's being put out there so that we get everything on this.
Thank you, Senator Timberlake. Are there other comments or suggestions around next steps from the committee? So I'm looking ahead to our meeting schedule. Our next opportunity to get together is April 23rd. We will have a report back from ACF committee on the Blueberry Commission request, along with some tax expenditure discussion. So we could potentially schedule the Workday folks for April 23rd. And then I noticed we do have a bit of a gap between that meeting and the following. It looks like 3 weeks. Lucia, can you just remind me why we're going 3 weeks?
Sure. It's funny, I actually had the wrong dates on my calendar because I thought it was every 2 weeks, but it's the second and fourth Friday has been the tradition. So, so that explains it.
So in having DAF's team come back, we could wait until May 14th, or we could schedule a special GOC meeting if that's what the committee would like to do. Representative Arata.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at all the documents that have been uploaded, that's a lot to go through. I don't think that any of us were concerned about the choice of Workday or the vetting that was done, but we really want to know about the breakdown of the relationship between the Workday implementation services and the state of Maine. Maybe staff would be able to kind of compile the relevant information regarding that, the emails back and forth, something to help us as we try to plow through this. It's just a suggestion. I don't know what other people think.
Thank you, Representative. I want to make sure the DAF's folks know that we are in no way complaining about the volume of documents. In fact, on its face, it appears you have responded to our request in our letter dated March 29th, and we appreciate your response. I think we all perhaps wanted a little more time to review them, but just know we are not complaining about the volume of documents. We do have staff who can assist us in reviewing them.
Am I the only one who would like to have some of it compiled a little more, or maybe organized in a way that's easier for us to go through?
Representative Arata, I think Lucia and her team will will be working on an analysis of the documents and can provide us perhaps some summaries of key documents, as well as highlight the areas in the list of documents to draw our attention to. So members will not be on their own reviewing all of them.
Thank you.
Senator Khan.
Yeah, going back to just the questions I had after listening to the overview the commissioner gave us, and maybe this is for a question for the commissioner. I apologize for not bringing it up earlier, but you mentioned that I think it was in March 2020 that there was a change in the scope of work, or an attempt to change the scope of work. But then you also mentioned that, you know, sort of where we're at now, where Maine is at now with Workday, is that they haven't made good on the deliverables, so on the contract, the things that they agreed to deliver. But in my mind, the scope of work and the deliverables are hand in hand. So sort of just a basic question here, but how do you differentiate between the two?
Right. Well, we weren't changing the scope of work. We were trying to more better articulate the statement of work. Sorry to confuse those two things. The scope was and continues to be the deliverables that were signed in the contract of 2018 and would enable the state to have a functioning HRMS system with the caveats that we outlined, that were outlined by the previous administration in that contract, including some of the things we talked about: labor cost distribution, the ability to process payroll 100%. The statement of work is who does what, when, and how do we know that the who has done the what appropriately, such that we can all move on to the next step, to ensure that there's real progress being made towards those deliverables. And because we had made a decision to not go live against the recommendations of the implementer, and we were right, because we can't process 50% of our payroll correctly, it was clear that there was some work that needed to be done on how do we make sure that we are all in alignment when we have to come to these decisions, because the implementer and the customer should not be at odds about the next step. So it was the statement of work that we were trying to revise so that that would feel like a more compatible and frankly, like moving forward process. It was stuck in we're not moving forward appropriately. And there was that back and forth of this document, like we can't even get to who's supposed to do what when. So it was not the scope of work. The scope of work continues to be the same.
So right. So if I understand you, it was more to update it reflecting at what stage the work was currently. But when you say also who does what when, was the work shifting from the state to the implementer or vice versa, so that then they would feel like we were actually asking them to do more than they had originally intended, or no? I see Heather shaking her head no, so.
No, I mean, they are the implementer. The state is a customer that was buying a product that was told that it would have the following components, and the implementer makes the agreement and signs the contract that says, we will get you there. We have the expertise. We are the professionals. We will bring in best case practices, and we will get the product implemented in the way such that it is working in the way that we said we would in our other contract, the SaaS contract. And
Okay.
It ended up actually the opposite, that the state of Maine was starting to have to make some, wait a minute, we're hearing something, but it's not jiving with what we're seeing. And so let's maybe relook at let's relook at the statement of work and see if we can't more clearly define that so that we all feel comfortable. Heather, would you add anything to that?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments from the committee? Representative Millet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've missed part of the presentation, but based on the next two meeting dates, I'm wondering if it would be more productive for staff to do the analysis of the data and give us their condensed version of what we all need to know at the next meeting, and then give us an opportunity to explore further conversations with the DAF's commissioner and staff and any other workday representatives at that later meeting in May, 3 weeks following the next meeting.
Thank you, Representative Millet. Just so that I understand, your proposal is to direct the staff to do an analysis of the documents provided, invite the commissioner and her team back on April 23rd, and invite the implementers on May 14th?
Yes.
Okay. I'm open to that schedule of events. I also understand that the implementers have hired representatives in Maine to represent them before the legislature. So I'm sure they're watching this, and the implementers would be welcome to submit in writing to us their comments on this discussion. Of course, they're always able to do that, but I just wanted to note that that would be an option if they'd like to prepare any written material for us. They're welcome to. So I'm open to that schedule as proposed by Representative Millet. Can I just get a thumbs up or a head nod from other members? Okay, so we'll proceed based on that plan. Any other comments or questions on this subject while we have the DAF's team with us? Seeing none, we definitely appreciate all of the time, the information, your patience with us today. We look forward to continuing conversation.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
All right, so seeing no other discussion on this matter, we'll continue on in our agenda and move to tab number 4, which is a report from the OPEGA director, status of projects in process. And I will turn it over to Lucia.
Sure. Thank you very much, Senator Libby. And behind tab 4, you have the work plan that has been updated for the decisions that you made at your last meeting. So if you look at that, it's the first page of it is the GOC approved projects. And we're continuing to move along on the Citizens Initiative process report, getting that out to you by the end of the second quarter of this year. We're actively working on the seed capital investment tax credit, doing the second phase of the MCILS work on indigency, including a survey of judges and interviews with screeners. And soon, hopefully, we'll get started on planning for the frontline survey. Planning the survey of frontline workers. On the second page, I would just note that, and as Senator Libby mentioned, there are 2 upcoming tax expenditure evaluations, which you talked about way back at the beginning of the meeting, that are ready for the current process is that we bring parameters, evaluation parameters, which are set forth in statute. We bring those to the GOC and take public comment. You have received these by email. So I just want to highlight that to you. They went out earlier this week by email to you, parameters for the credit for rehabilitation of historic properties and the research expense tax credit or R&D credit. At the meeting on the 23rd, OPEGA will present those parameters documents and take stakeholder input. So it'll be a webinar format for that meeting, just as a heads up, because it is a standard part of the process to take public comment on the parameters. So those are teed up to happen on the 23rd as well. So there will be a public comment section of that meeting. And I guess additionally, I would just note that we are scheduling also for the end of May, the first quarterly report back from MCILS as a response to the part 1 report that we did. So you asked for quarterly report backs. We're going to work with them to get that at the end of May. And I just also wanted to note that we're here in OPEGA, we're keeping track of active legislation in policy committees related to our current reviews. There are several bills right now in the taxation committee related to tax expenditures and that are in the midst of hearings and work sessions related to the seed credit, the R&D credit, and there was already a bill that was voted on the historic property rehab tax credit. So very timely that these are in the legislature and that we are looking at them, and we are working to support the work of the policy committees and you as needed on those bills. So I just wanted to note those, that I think there's also an MCILS related bill in judiciary that we're keeping an eye on as well. So and for those of you on the other policy committees here, that you can keep an eye out too, and we can all stay up to date on what's going on GOC related outside the GOC. So that's pretty much what I have for you. Obviously, with the discussions today, we will be working in OPEGA to get you, for us to review the volume of documents and give you some concise, hopefully synopsis and guide for where you can find what, and to facilitate your review. And we will be get to work on that. And there is a lot, so it won't be overnight that we can do that, but we'll get on it right away. And I think that's it for today.
Thank you, Lucia. Comments or questions from the committee for Lucia on work plan? Seeing none. The next item on our agenda is planning for upcoming meetings. And so we've already had some discussion about that, but on April 23rd, as Lucia had noted, we will review and hopefully approve the evaluation parameters for a couple of those tax credits, the historic rehabilitation tax credit and the R&D credit. We'll also receive stakeholder input at that time. Additionally, for April 23rd, we're planning on a report back from DECD on Pine Tree Development Zone questions that we have posed to them, and receive a report back from the ACF committee on the Wild Blueberry Commission request. In addition, I believe we'd like to invite the DAFS commissioner and her team back to that meeting for further discussion once committee members and staff have had a chance to review and digest the materials that they sent over yesterday. And then for the May 14th meeting, we will have hopefully continued conversation around tax expenditure evaluation. I know Representative Millett was having internet connection issues during that period, but Representative Millett, I volunteered myself and yourself to work with the staff and other interested parties in between these two meetings to try to put down on paper some adjustments that we can discuss at the committee level. So we'll keep that topic moving forward. And then May 28th, as Lucia noted, report back from MCILS. So that's kind of look ahead for the next 3 meetings. Are there other subject areas or comments that committee members would like to make at this time on that matter? Seeing none, looks like we're approaching the lunch hour. So if there's no other comments or questions from the committee, our next meeting will be on April 23rd at 9 a.m. And a motion to adjourn would be in order. Made by Senator Timberlake. Seconded by Senator Keim. All those in favor, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you all. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the lovely weather.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.